The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's Revelation.
Go ahead.
What's up? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It is June 18th, 19th? I think it's the 18th. It is the 19th, sorry. All right, so the U.S. Federal Reserve isn't interested in restarting the U.S. economy and holds interest rates steady once again. Big Supreme Court win for traditionalists. Supreme Court ruled that state bans on gender dysphoric medical treatment, sex changes for minors can stay in place. We got more news about Iran and Iraq. And real breaking news, something very important. The victims of the political assassinations in Minnesota was burglarized. And if you've seen this trend recently, you might know what that means. All right, let's get into the news today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. We're going to start with the New York Times. Fed sees higher inflation and lower growth ahead. Of course they do. If they don't do anything about interest rates, there won't be higher growth. And particularly if the Republicans in the legislature do not pass Trump's bill, we're not going to have growth either. So I don't know what the Fed, Jerome Powell, is waiting for, and I don't really know. Their target is 2% to lower interest rates if inflation gets to 2% or below 2%. It's really semantics at this point. Then they'd say they'd lower interest rates. Well, inflation is at 2.1. So why wouldn't you forego your so-called trigger by 1/10 of a point to get the economy going again? Again, Jerome Powell kept exercising this lie that says that tariffs cause inflation. Everybody knows tariffs don't cause inflation. Tariffs can rise prices, but that's not inflation. Inflation is different. Inflation just isn't rising prices. I'm going to show the graph here about where the interest rates are. They're about 4.25%. If you're in savings, I have money in savings. This is good because you could really get a decent return for money sitting in the bank. More headlines from the New York Times. Trump seizes on rate cuts elsewhere in bid to pressure the Fed. President Trump has increasingly pointed to rate cuts by other central banks as he pressures Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, to reduce borrowing costs. Everybody is reducing interest rates. Why are other central banks reducing interest rates? To spur economic activity to lead to growth, because otherwise you're at risk of getting into stagflation. Of course, the big headline here is the Wall Street Journal. Fed holds rates steady and keeps door open to cuts. Officials are waiting to see whether businesses manage higher costs from tariffs by trimming profits or pushing up prices. Well, that's not up to the Fed to look at, see what businesses do. It's to look at overall economic indicators, not necessarily how they see the future. I mean, Jerome Powell said that before. The Fed is all about seeing what the future holds. It's about looking at economic indicators and bolstering what can be seen as economic trends, or if the trends obviously are bad, is to fight against those trends. New York Times has another article. The Fed isn't calling it stagflation, but the risks are still rising. President Trump's trade war is likely to lead to higher prices. Says who? Is likely. According to whom? According to the New York Times? According to Jerome Powell? According to anti-Trumpers? The war in the Middle East could make the job harder still. The Fed isn't there to forecast what's coming over the horizon to see what businesses do, what governments may or may not do. They're supposed to look at economic indicators and help spur positive economic outcomes. They don't. They're fighting against Trump. They're fighting against a resurgence of the economy in the United States. Why? They don't like Trump. They don't want Trump to succeed because actually Trump succeeded in his first term, and he touted that through the Biden term after his presidency, that the best economy in world history, blah, blah, blah. God forbid they let that happen again, and that would lead to more populists getting elected, more conservatives getting elected, and that's not what they want. So in a more subtle fashion, we still have the system fighting against Trump. However, there are some wins for traditionalists. Big news today, National Review, a big Supreme Court win for reality over transgender ideology. The court declined to blind itself to sex differences, how medical practice works, or to the uncertain science in this area. The Supreme Court handed down this morning the most closely watched case of this term, United States versus Cremetti, affirming Tennessee law banning gender affirming care. It's really gender rejecting care. And it's treatments for minors. Because what it does, it's really biological sex rejecting care. Because it was gender affirming care, what it would affirm the gender you're assigned at birth. But it doesn't. So this covers puberty blockers and hormone therapy for gender dysphoria, as well as gender surgeries for minors. The court's 6-3 opinion, written by Chief Justice John Roberts, over the dissents of 3 liberals, concluded that Tennessee law, and this is the most important part, did not discriminate on the basis of sex or transgenderism, and therefore needed to only satisfy rational basis review, which it did. Amy Coney Barrett, Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas would have gone further with their opinion. I'm going to move on just a second here. I'm going to try to clean up. I see that the stream is lagging a bit, so I'm going to try a couple, which it seems like it's hung up. Just a couple purges of caches and the like that sometimes helps the stream get along a little bit faster. So let's move on from this article. We're going to go to the AP now. Supreme Court okays Tennessee ban on gender-affirming care for kids, a setback for transgender rights, as I previously discussed. But the Associated Press has a certain take on this, which isn't really correct. It says, well, it's misleading for people that are just surfing the news. Supreme Court okays Tennessee ban on gender-affirming care for kids. Because it's a Supreme Court ruling and it's a precedent, it's not just for Tennessee. It's going to apply to all states that ban this gender-affirming care, which isn't really, it's gender-rejecting care, I would say, or gender-reversing care. would probably be more correct. We'll go to the article here. The Supreme Court on Wednesday upheld Tennessee's ban on gender rejecting care for transgender minors, a jolting setback to transgender rights. The Justice's 6-3 decision in the case from Tennessee effectively protects from legal challenges many efforts by President Donald Trump's Republican administration and state governments to roll back protections for transgender people. What the fuck are transgender rights? What the fuck are transgender protections? There's no such thing as transgender rights. They're individual rights, which transgender can use to do whatever they please with. But what are transgender protections? It seems to be the Democratic narrative is that, and if you see it in the mainstream media too, that Republicans attack transgender people. That's just not the case. A transgender person has all the rights of any other person, including black people, Whoopi Goldberg, and we're going to get to Whoopi in just a second. Chief Justice John Roberts, continuing with the AP article, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the conservative majority that the law banning puberty blockers and hormone treatments for transgender minors doesn't violate the constitutional equal protection clause. Right, there's no special rights for protected classes. There's no special rights or protections for groups. There just isn't. In the 70s, there were anti-discrimination laws added to the Constitution that you can't discriminate for people based on X, Y, and Z. Well, that's true. But the problem is what transgender people, what they want to carve out male, female, and other. And that works within Title IX and all this stuff. That doesn't work. You as a person, right, get all the rights you want. But if you want to declare yourself the King of France, legally, groups don't have to recognize your claim. So I don't care what you do. If you want to call yourself a woman and you're a man, you can do it. But the law says I don't have to agree with you. That's all there is to it. You want to call yourself transgender? I'll call you transgender. But if you're a man and you think you're a woman, I don't have to go along with that. If you want to be called whatever you want to call as a courtesy, I'll do it. But if you force me into compelled speech, I don't have to agree. All right, and if you don't know what the protection clause is, it requires the government to treat similar situated people the same. And advocates for the other side would say, well, it's not similar because these people are black or these people are trans or these people. That doesn't matter. The situated people the same. So the situation the same, everybody's got to be treated equal. You get it? You don't get special treatment because you're trans or you're black or whatever. So Fox News is reporting that a young woman who regrets transition celebrates Supreme Court decision on youth trans treatments. Prisha Mosley celebrates High Court ruling upholding Tennessee's ban on transgender medical treatments for minors after her own painful journey. This is just, like I said, it's not reality. If you want to be in your own little world, you have the freedom to do so. Your subjective world, if you want to call yourself the King of France, you can do that. There's no law against that. And there's no law against calling yourself a woman if you're a man. There's no scientific evidence that there's a woman, a female gender living inside you as a male, and that it has to be realized. There's no science backing that up, I'm sorry to say. Again, I just realized something, again, that there was an article that I called up for today, and it didn't make it into the cut. I don't know what happened to it, but I just realized it right now. So let me see if it didn't make it in. I knew it. What the fuck? So let me just I'll just reiterate it for you as long as we're on the subject. Okay, so yeah, weird. So before I get into the next story, I want to get into this. So J.D. Vance joined Blue Sky, which was a liberal alternative to X or other social media. We've seen this happen again and again. There was Mastodon and other social media platforms where liberals felt they were discriminated against, not, where platforms like X opened their dialogue up to conservatives who were banned and shunned previously. And liberals didn't like that. They liked being the only voice there, and people that contradicted them or argued with them were shut down or banned. So they made their own platforms like Blue Sky and Mastodon, et cetera, et cetera. So J.D. Vance yesterday, I had 3 or 4 of these articles connected to the story, and I don't know what happened to them, why they didn't make it into the cut here. They never made it to my computer. So in any case, he went on, and I had the whole text from his post on Blue Sky. He went on about the Supreme Court's decision about gender affirming care. And he went on in this big post describing what had happened and about basically what is happening. And then at the last few posts, he went into the science, pretty much reiterating what I just said, that there's no scientific basis for female spirit living inside a female spirited gender living inside males, and that needs to be realized through gender affirming care. I would call it crazy affirming care. He didn't go to the length of my hyperbole. So within a few hours, he was already banned off Blue Sky because he had a difference of opinion surrounding gender rejecting care, gender confusing care, gender distorting care, whatever you want to call it. So I had a couple of those articles. I was going to read the whole text of his posts on Blue Sky. And in this case, I don't know what happened to it, because usually you could find the messages I send to myself, they get rerouted to crazy places. I don't know how that happens. I could usually track them down. Not in this case. I don't know what happened to it. All right, let's move on to another big story here. The New York Post is reporting, break-in reported at the home of assassinated Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman days after double murder. The Brooklyn Park home of the murdered Minnesota Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband was broken into overnight Tuesday. The house had been boarded up since Sunday following the grisly double murder, allegedly at the hands of the accused political assassin Vance Bolter. The home was once again processed by crime scene investigators for evidence of a burglary. The home appeared to have been searched by an unknown individual. However, the family had indicated they don't believe anything is missing, nothing that they would know of. This is another indication that intelligence agencies are involved. This has happened several times with killings, strange killings, where intelligence agencies are suspected of being involved, and then after homes, either where the crime occurred or a home connected to the crime, is burglarized. And not burglarized like people break in and they take pictures to post online of the crime scene, blood on the floor, or whatever. Nope. The house is ransacked and searched. So you could let your imagination run away with you if you've ever watched crime scene dramas where investigators of dubious origin break into a home, or criminals, the mob, or people that are trying to kill you will break into the home and rifle through things looking for secret documents or tapes or whatever. So this is what's happening here. This is what this means. This is another indication that somebody with nefarious means connected to the crime is involved. What were they looking for? Did the Hortmans have evidence of some sort? Did the Hortmans have a dead man switch? Did the Hortmans have something on the Democratic Party that they said, if you come after me for voting no against this bill that was going to grant illegal aliens health care in Minnesota, and a Democrat, not only a Democrat, but Speaker of the House, voted against it in a blatant move against the Democrat Party, you know this origin is somewhere in the DNC of this crime. What were they looking for? This is the twist. So if the people are murdered and then their house is burglarized, they weren't looking for cash and jewels. They were looking for information, something that the Hortmans had, or specifically Melissa Hortman had. This is evidence that bolsters the case that this was some sort of security op. Now, I say intelligence agencies, probably not the FBI, probably not the CIA, probably security tied security. It's still, like I said, organizations don't have to be intelligence organizations. Security organization tied to the Democrats, the DNC, or the liberal establishment at large. Who knows who pays these people? But this is very, 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 very concerning, and it bolsters our case. Now, what is going to become of Bolter? Who knows? Probably the same thing that's going to go with Ryan Routh. Oh, he's in prison somewhere. Well, nobody ever sees him, and he's really not in prison. He's living in Paraguay or something. So there's going to be a big trial, and the whole trial is going to smear the Republicans and Alex Jones and Donald Trump. Then after the trial is over, he's going to be sent to be executed or sent to maximum security prison. And then no one will ever see him again, so no one knows if he's actually still in prison or living in Paraguay. All right, more stories here from Reuters. U.S. officials preparing for possible strike in Iran in coming days, Bloomberg reports. New York Post, dozens of Iranian missiles strike major Israeli hospital and residential buildings as Israel hits nuclear sites. You could see Iran is getting more and more desperate, striking civilians. NDTV World, U.S. doomsday plane that can withstand nuclear blast lands in Washington as Trump mulls Iran strike. A doomsday plane is capable of withstanding nuclear blasts, cyber attacks, and electromagnetic effects, and is equipped to fire retaliatory missiles. So this is the big thing here is that it's shielded against UMP attack, EMP attack, electromagnetic attack, dirty bomb, as well as nuclear blasts, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just for Trump. I believe it's for the whole cabinet. So there's a picture of it. I'll show you right there. And then Jerusalem Post, Iran make us proud. Burn Tel Aviv to the ground. Mass pro-Iran rally takes over New York's Times Square. The solidarity of Iran was organized by the socialist pro-Palestine Bronx it says anti-Iran coalition. I don't think that's what it is. Anti-war coalition. These people got to really prove Their copy, Jesus. Which called for the support of the brave Iranian and Palestinian people. Iran, make us proud. Burn Tel Aviv to the ground, shouted the crowd. With solidarity with Iran rally was organized by the Socialist Pro-Palestinian Bronx Anti-War Coalition, which is correct, which called for the people to come out in full force and support the brave Iranian Palestinian people fighting for all free peoples worldwide. How could you be anti-war coalition if you were shouting to burn Tel Aviv to the ground? The problem is with leftist groups, they're not very smart. The thing is, you have to have focus and cohesion and specificity. You can't be loosey-goosey with, you can't be anti-war, but then also preaching for Iran to burn Tel Aviv to the ground. More headlines from Fox News. Trump downplays signs of MAGA unrest over possible military strike on Iran. My supporters are more in love with me today, he says. My supporters are more in love with me today. I'm more in love with them. More than they ever were at election time, so he says. I don't know about that. Washington Post, Democrats raise war powers concerns as Trump mulls strikes. The reality surrounding this is that the executive branch was given the powers of war. Sorry, the liberal establishment did that. So they took it away from Congress. As I said previously, I think the executive branch should have short-term military strike powers, but then beyond that, if it's a sustained campaign, that those sort of things have to be okayed by the legislature. I don't think we should get involved. That's just my thing. If it's a one and done bunker buster or several strikes with bunker busters and that's it, that's the only thing I would be okay with, and it doesn't have to be done now. I think a wait and see is more prudent. Why? Because as PJ Media said, Russia's warning over the U.S. aid to Israel isn't just noise. Why is that? Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov cautioned the United States against offering direct military aid to Israel. Would radically destabilize the region. Russia isn't just talking down. The reason is its forces are deeply bogged down in Ukraine. Any serious intervention on Iran's behalf is likely off the table for Russia. And that is the whole reason that the military-industrial complex is stepping through this. There's a means to the end. So getting involved in Russia specifically was to be a long, drawn-out war of attrition, to wear down Russia, to eventually have regime change in Russia. But in the meantime now, the liberal establishment feels they could strike Iran because Russia is tied up in Ukraine. That very well may be. Article goes on to say what Russia can and cannot do. Russia's actual options fall in these three lanes: leverage the UN, arm Iran quietly, mediate for leverage. Also, One American News, Tucker Carlson challenges Ted Cruz over his support for U.S. involvement in Iran-Israel war. What we do know is that Ted Cruz is for regime change. I'm not. I don't care. I know that's what the foreign diplomacy hawks like, the blob. I know that's what they want, and that's what they... The thing is, they've been involved and they're always involved. And what do? They create failed states. They call it regime change. They call it nation building. But what you're really left with is a failed state. A failed state is no threat whatsoever. Except in Libya, if you're concerned about slavery, then that's what a failed state gives you. They're lawless. I tended to side with Tucker Carlson on this. I'm not a big fan of Ted Cruz. I mean, he's a decent member of the coalition, but I don't tend to agree with him although he might be constitutionally smart in a lawyerly way, I think he's not street smart and kind of stupid when it comes to things based in reality. PJ Media is reporting PR fallout of Ted Cruz versus Tucker Carlson. Yes, it's as bad as you heard. What they're talking about here, really, and PJ Media sides with Ted Cruz. No Iranian is ever going to kill me, Carlson said. And then the more important dust up is not Tucker Carlson, it's Whoopi Goldberg. Claims living under Iranian regime is the same as being black in America. I'm sorry, they used to just keep hanging black people. It's the same. It's not the same. We're not the same. Just like John Wick said, we're not the same. Just like Michael Douglas's character in Falling Down said, we're not the same. We're not the same. It's not the same. Living under a you know what a totalitarian regime is? You talk all the time about authoritarianism. You don't even know what it means. Black people enjoy equal individual liberties, equal rights under the law, just like anybody else. Nobody is lynching black people. Name one instance. You can't. I'm not saying crime doesn't occur and even racial crime doesn't occur. Sure it does. It's so small. It's really, really small if you look at all crime statistics. It's small. You think the state is against black people? You think the state is racist? Cops are racist? Come on. During a heated exchange on The View, co-host Whoopi Goldberg claimed that the experience of black Americans in the United States is equivalent to the conditions faced by citizens under the authoritarian regime in Iran. The discussion began when co-host Elisa Farah highlighted the severe human rights violations in Iran, noting that the regime will literally throw gay people off buildings. The regime, meaning the government, the security apparatus of the government, and routinely suppresses basic freedoms. She argued that such conditions are vastly different from the life in the United States. Whoopi Goldberg is dumb. She's really stupid. And the fact that she's on national TV showing how stupid she is all the time is embarrassing for black people. Because I know a lot of black people, a lot of really smart black people. She's not one of them. Goldberg immediately rejected the comparison and responded that the U.S. is known to tie gay folks to the car. Then she compared life in Iran to black Americans. I'm sorry, they used to just keep hanging black people. It's the same. First of all, are there racist people in America that might conduct racist crime, hurt black people just for the reason they're black? Sure, it's so small. A small percentage of crime in the United States. However, the state, I don't care what fucking state it is, and we're not talking about rogue cops. I'm not talking about George Floyd because I said Chauvin used a legal police hold on George Floyd, and realistically that didn't cause his death, because if that knee on the neck was a chokehold, it wouldn't be allowed. It's not a chokehold. Chokeholds aren't allowed in any police department, but nobody fucking cares. So the security apparatus of the states, of the federal government, don't use and don't jail people just because of their race. It's ridiculous. Majority of black, I don't want to say a majority, an inordinate percentage of crime is committed by black people. There's a lot of reasons for that I don't agree with. So it's not just because they're black they commit crime. It's socioeconomic. And the reason a lot of the black communities in socioeconomic straits is something that we could certainly debate. and I might agree with a lot of liberals on. But the fact is that law enforcement isn't racist, and Americans just aren't generally racist. This white supremacy bullshit that Biden was pushing. And Biden was the president of the United States. That's fucked up. That's when the state is literally taking a racist stance against white Americans because they're conjuring up this dream, this fever dream that the majority of people white people in America are Christian fundamentalists and that are white supremacists and all this bullshit. It just isn't true. Fox News, Whoopi Goldberg rebuked by Iranian dissidents for comparing life in the U.S. to Iran. The View co-host claimed life for Black Americans was the same as living under Iran's totalitarian regime. And the funny thing is that the post-millennial said authoritarian regime. At least Fox got it right. It's totalitarian. And we're going to get into why. Let's get into the text here. Iranian dissidents are speaking out over Whoopi Goldberg's offensive claim that life for Black Americans is equivalent to living under Iran's brutal autocracy. Whoopi Goldberg's comparison, and I'm sorry, hold on a second. Oh, here we go. Whoopi Goldberg's comparison between, hold on a second. Not allowed. I'm not allowed. Not allowed. I don't know. Some reason there's problems today. Whoopi Goldberg's comparison between being Black in America and living under Iran's authoritarian regime is deeply misguided and dismisses the brutal realities faced by millions of Iranians, says Dr. Sheila Nazarian, told Fox News Digital. Is she Persian? I think Nazarian is actually Armenian. I'm not going to get too much into that. We're going to stay here, and I'm going to have to switch to a different scene here because my scene switcher's down. Let's not do that, because if we start that, we've been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car. Listen, I'm sorry. They used to just keep hanging Black people, Goldberg insisted, as Griffin pushed back and said the situations weren't comparable. Of course they weren't. In the year 2025 in the United States, it's nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit into Iran right now, Griffin said. It is the same, Goldberg said. When Griffin tried to explain that life in modern day America was day and night with that of the theocratic regime in Iran, Goldberg countered, not if you're Black. Yeah, if you're Black in America and you go out in a miniskirt, the state security apparatus will come and scoop you up. If you stand on a street corner protesting the administration, the federal police will come and scoop you up for exercising your First Amendment rights. She is so stupid, it's not comparable at all. She is another race baiter. While racism is a serious and ongoing challenge in the United States, says Nazarian, I don't necessarily believe so. I'm not saying it isn't an issue and there aren't crimes related to racism. I don't think it doesn't play a major part in crime or in society. It's really more related to private economic opportunity is where I think racism plays a major fact. That there's still people running businesses out there that may be racially biased and not hire people because they're Black or whatever. You know, there's some credibility to that claim. But the fact that you think that police, federal or state or municipal police are out there targeting people of color, it just doesn't know. It's offensive to those who suffer every day under the regime, said Nazarian. In Iran, the government controls nearly every aspect of life. That makes it totalitarian. People can be imprisoned, tortured, raped, even executed for peaceful protests, for criticizing the regime, or simply expressing their opinions online. And that's not too far from either China or really Germany or the UK right now. You can be in prison for expressing your opinions online. New York Post, Israel brands Iran's supreme leader Khomeini as modern Hitler who cannot continue to exist. You know they're lying when they have to. Anybody who compares anybody to Hitler or the Nazis is lying. It's a demonization campaign. And if you have to go to comparables to demonize, then your point of view that needs that kind of buttress, your opinion that needs that kind of buttress, isn't worthy. Because you should just be able, if Trump is so bad, or if somebody is so bad, if Khomeini is so bad, you could just say, the Ayatollah Khomeini ordered the execution of peaceful protesters. You don't have to compare him to Hitler. Israel on Thursday branded the Ayatollah, the modern Hitler. It cannot continue to exist. Of course not. They're looking for regime change. The reason is they went in to knock out the nuclear capability, and it was so fucking easy that they're like, well, let's keep rolling. And then they kept rolling, and then Netanyahu said to Trump, this is so easy, it's a cakewalk, you should join in. The IDF has been instructed and knows that in order to achieve all its goals, the man absolutely should not continue to exist. So they're advocating the murder or the assassination of a head of state. TWZ, Iranian government aircraft makes mysterious dash to Amman, Iran's potential presidential A340, I think it's an Airbus, and two A321s have flown to Amman days after Israel declared air superiority over the country. Iran's primary presidential plane and two other government airlines have touched down in Omani capital of Muscat. Yeah, they're fleeing. I mean, if you're in the capital that's being besieged and bombed, and your leadership is being taken out by precision strikes and or sabotage and or assassins, the Mossad has completely infiltrated Iran, and they're fearful. And then the United States is saying we got bunker busters, so even in your cave 300 meters underground, we can still get to you. So they're going to flee the country. So basically, regime change has already occurred. If they're outside of the state they're supposed to preside over, rule over, this is the time for the Iranians to rise up. And really, to be honest with you, I'm anti-war. I don't agree with any of this. I find that the claims that Iran is about to get a nuclear weapon dubious. There's some evidence, but 60% enrichment is not 93% enrichment. So, and 60% enrichment is equal to that of commercial use for nuclear power generation. So, because they want to have nuclear power generation, you know, that doesn't make them a pariah. So, Independent. UK Independent, Trump is losing confidence in Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard as she mulls removing her entire office, senior officials say. President reportedly angered by intelligence chief's social media warnings against warmongers placing the world on the brink of nuclear annihilation. I agree with Tulsi. I agree with Tucker. I agree with Alex Jones. This is uncharted territory, it's a slippery slope, which could quickly escalate and start burning out of control, as war often does. So I don't think the conditions in Iran predicated, I mean, we don't have any control over Israel. So whatever Israel wanted to do militarily against another country, I don't care. But as far as the United States, I don't believe the evidence predicated any military intervention. All right, let's move on. Immigration. Washington Times, Trump effect. Study finds 1 million illegal immigrants have left the country since January. 1 million self-deported. They took the $1,000 and a flight out of the country, cut their losses, and they may be legally able to come back. And if there is any ever any amnesty, that they might be considered. I would hope they would, just as a generosity. I'm not against immigrants. I'm against illegal immigration, especially waves. Waves of illegal immigration, or waves of immigration at all. Like you saw in Europe, it was very destabilizing, like you saw in the United States, and you're seeing the destabilization right now. Post-millennial, Portland residents beg Antifa not to destroy property during anti-ICE arrests. Gray Landing, a low-income apartment complex housing elderly residents, veterans, and families, has signs reading, "Please do not vandalize." I think even people in the Pacific Northwest and the West are getting tired of this bullshit socialist anarchist nonsense. I know if I lived in a town or a city and every night there were fucking people lighting off fireworks, attacking government buildings, and in the street late into the night, fuck that shit. Fuck that. If you want to protest during the day and stand there with signs and megaphones, I don't have any problem with that. But this kind of anarchist bullshit, running around at night, burning shit, vandalizing shit, lighting off fireworks, attacking government or federal officers and or local police, fuck that shit. Fuck that. How could you be a taxpayer? Maybe these people don't pay taxes. How could you go along with that? Yeah, resist the man. Fuck that shit. I'm not an anarchist. You need government. How the government works and stuff, that's up for debate. The latest wave of unrest began June 8th when activists blocked a driveway of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility. Since then, clashes have continued across the city nightly, and 22 people have been arrested this month in connection with the anti-ICE demonstrations on various criminal allegations. Atlantic Journal-Constitution, Hispanic reporter arrested at Metro Atlanta protest, now in ICE custody, facing deportation. Mario Guevara is believed to be the only journalist facing deportation after being swept up in the Trump administration crackdown. I think he was working for a Hispanic, another nation's news organization, I think. I'm not sure who he works for. I didn't read into the article too much. But he's here illegally. So if you're here illegally or you overstayed a visa, you're ripe for deportation. It's valid. Post-millennial illegal alien child sex offender arrested after dragging ICE agent with his car for 50 yards during traffic stop. The federal officer sustained deep wounds and several abrasions that required more than 30 stitches. So apparently what happened is Roberto Carlos Munoz, 39, of Guatemala, convicted child sex offender, has been accused of using his vehicle to drag an ICE officer. He has an extensive criminal history. Oh, it went into how the crime, what happened. So he was pulled over. He was going to be subject to arrest. He didn't roll down his window. He didn't exit the vehicle. So they smashed the window with a club, and they went, as they usually do, they go in to try to drag him and shut off the car and drag him out of the vehicle. He put it into drive and accelerated. That's assault. That's actually attempted manslaughter. So it's pretty serious. Washington Times, police attackers, looters charged. IRS probes protest funding in Los Angeles anti-ICE riots. Los Angeles prosecutors revealed a slew of new charges against rioters who lit police vehicles and on fire and looted businesses during the wild protests against immigration enforcement that took over the city's downtown. Alongside the new criminal cases, though, is the Internal Revenue Service and the FBI, and federal prosecutors launched a joint investigation into the demonstration's funding sources after it was found out that these people with limited monetary resources all of a sudden had equipment that was very expensive, that they know that they didn't buy, that was funded from a different source, a hidden source. They're trying to find out who did it. And those organizations may be held accountable. Post-millennial Trendaragua is back, and they're terrorizing Aurora residents at the same apartment complexes where they had been raided previously. So again, my speculation based on the circumstances, based on what we know at this time, is yes, it appears that Trendaragua involvement in gangs terrorizing local residents trying to evict people who are legally there. Mediaite, Dick Durbin plays supercut of Trump's cognitive decline at hearing on Biden's mental acuity. So if you didn't know what was going on here with Dick Durbin, where's the text for this, mind you? I had the text. So it's during the Republican Senate hearing about Joe Biden, the fact that he was mentally incapacitated for much of his term. And so Dick Durbin plays just some snippets of Trump seemingly incoherent, but Trump can conduct news conferences Biden never could. It's like Whoopi Goldberg comparing the United States to Iran. Comparing Donald Trump, and I'm not saying Donald Trump is I mean, he's still older, is the brightest star in the sky. However, he has way more cognitive ability than Joe Biden ever did. The federal FBI settles lawsuit over Biden-era cover-up of trans killer manifesto. This MD Kittle was also a plaintiff in the lawsuit, FOI, demanding that the FBI release the manifesto, which they never did. Why? Because it showed that the transgender person was crazy. And the reason they committed the crime is because they had gender dysphoria and they were crazy. Not only that, but they're part of a cult. City Journal, blue states used to lead in education, not anymore. Republican-led states are banning ineffective teaching methods, rapidly improving student outcomes. That's indeed true. Because the problem is the left is going down this crazy road to crazy town. They don't care. They were all about data, and then they don't care about the data because it's mean. You can't be mean to people, even if they're crazy. Just the news, as Congress struggles to cut spending, states expose Medicaid fraud on steroids. Medicaid's for millionaires, jaw-dropping swindles, bureaucrats who aren't checking patients' eligibility as Congress struggles to find spending cuts. And bloated federal budget, a growing number of states are exposing breathtaking extent of fraud. It's with any budget. If you're receiving government money and it's part of your budget, budgets always have to increase. If you let them go down, then they'll stay down. So that's why they don't want to investigate Medicaid fraud, because then the states will get less reimbursement. Arizona became the latest to unveil failures. 130,000 of 388,000 state residents who applied for Medicaid last year were not verified, suggesting up to $6 billion a year of Medicaid fraud. The report showed 24% of Arizonans who applied for assistance were vetted, and those who were vetted, who did get vetted properly, 34 weren't supposed to be accepted, but they were accepted anyway. Just the News, LA's $20 million response to protests illustrates problems of officer shortages and overtime pay. This could have been tagged with the other Washington Times article I just went over about the investigations and arrests made in LA, but the $20 million is the reason is they cut the police department in LA as part of defund the police. And now they spend all this money in overtime. And the $1 billion budget for the police department is bigger than the city's entire budget. $1 billion in overtime in the police department. No, 265 million went to overtime. So they have 8,600 officers. They're supposed to have 9,500. So nearly 1,000 less. And if you have more officers, you don't have to pay for overtime. So they allow people to protest in the street and cause riots. They allow rioting, and then they have to pay for the response. There's not a check. Liberals don't like to write. Tech Explorers has justice at stake as generative AI enters the courtroom. So it's displacing jobs everywhere in every sector. The free press, escaped from New York. Businesses leaders save. They'll flee if Mamdani wins. So Mamdani is the socialist who is going to ruin New York. And he's 10 points behind Cuomo anyway. So it's bad enough if Cuomo gets elected. It's likely he will. But if Mamdani gets elected, forget it. It's crazy. I'm not going to get into the story because we're short on time. Zero Hedge, demystifying the dirty dozen, why some fruits and vegetables carry more pesticides. You have to eat organic. Otherwise, you're digesting terrible amounts of pesticides, specifically herbicides, atrazine, glyphosate, and that's directly contributed to the rise in hormonal cancers. The best things to eat are bananas, cauliflower, avocados, pineapples, onions, and papayas because of their thick skins. Asparagus, cabbage, watermelon, mangoes, carrots, mushrooms, kiwi, frozen or fresh sweet corn, sweet peas, rounded out the list. They all have protected covering that resists the pesticides. New York Times again, China unleashes hackers against friend Russia seeking war secrets. China and Russia have never been friends. They have a convenient alliance just because it's convenient now. But Russia never trusted the Chinese, and the Chinese never trusted Russia. That goes back decades. But China is seeking war secrets because Russia is battling NATO and the West, and China wants to see what they learned. Post-millennial, Canada announces $4.3 billion more for the Ukraine war following G7 meeting. The pledge includes $2 billion for military equipment and supplies and $2.2 billion loan for reconstruction efforts. Can't reconstruct before the war's over. The war's not even over. You're giving the corrupt country $2 billion. You'll never see that money again, and it will never go to reconstruction. Stupid Canada. But it doesn't matter. They're part of the liberal establishment. They do what the liberal establishment says. Zero Hedge, Germany, mildly restrictive immigration policies are paying off. Any restriction on waves of immigration is going to help any state. And that's the reason the European countries are going right. They don't believe in supranational organizations like the EU, who have made it possible for waves of immigration of people who don't assimilate to the culture. So they take over the culture. But it doesn't matter to the liberal establishment. It's about authoritarianism and controlling society. Zero Hedge also reports China auto industry on the verge of collapse as 6 major cities run out of car buying subsidies. If you don't know how socialism works, it's the state-run production, and you pay the people to buy products from the state, and so it's a fucking circle jerk. It's not, socialist economies don't work. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage. Don't forget to engage the channel. Like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. live on Rumble. All right, so no episode tomorrow, no episode Monday. Got shit to do. Everybody needs a little bit of a vacation time off, so I'll see you Tuesday. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you. Like I said, like, subscribe to the channel, join me on social media, X, Facebook, Gettermind, Truth Social, Substack. Stay hip to the trick. You're under attack psychologically and biologically. I'll see you next week. Respect.
This is a conspiracy.
The New World Order.
I'm an American. I have rights.